This is Attorney Gerald Griggs, the Justicefighter.
I don't think they ready for you, Attorney Griggs.
Justicefighter.
The Justicefighter. Yeah.
I got calls.
What's going on, y'all? It's Attorney Gerald Griggs, the Justicefighter here on Justicefighter Radio. And I hope everybody had a great holidays, great Thanksgiving, or whatever you celebrate. Just time with your family. And we're back here on Justicefighter Radio, the Runoff Edition. And so I thought that, you know, after all the Black Friday shopping and after everybody getting together with family and friends, I would get together with one of my friends, someone who's doing amazing things in politics, but also just a great individual. And so I'm honored to have Lindy Miller, who's a candidate for the Public Service Commission, in studio here at Justicefighter Radio. So how you doing, Lindy?
I'm doing great, Gerald. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. It's great to have you. It's great to have you.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, let's jump right into it. So
Sure.
Just explain to the listeners what the Public Service Commission does.
Yeah, so I call the Public Service Commission the most important seat no one's ever heard of. The Public Service Commission is comprised of 5 commissioners who are all elected statewide, and basically they decide what our bills look like, how much we pay for our electricity, for our gas, for our home telephones. They make investments in the state. Are we going to invest in nuclear energy? Are we going to invest in solar, renewables? And from the moment you wake up and turn on your lights and your coffee and your shower for hot water, the minute you go to bed, they decide how much you're going to pay. It's a really important job.
You know, what are some of the most important issues in this particular race?
Yeah, so let me start by saying that I am so excited that we have a runoff on December 4th. I think for my race particularly, I'm challenging a 12-year incumbent, and we managed to push him to a runoff election, which is so exciting. We have John Barrow on the ballot also. I know he's going to be joining us in a little while, who's going to be fighting to make sure our votes count. And so I keep saying to folks, if you care about your votes and you care about your bills, you better show up to the polls on December 4th for this runoff election. It's going to be really, really key for our everyday lives.
Yes. And we were just talking off air about one of the most important pushes before December 4th, and that's the early vote. Do you want people to get out early and vote, and how would they do that?
All across the state, you can check with your elections office and find out where early voting is going to be located. It's certainly Monday through Friday. Show up, vote early, and then for those who aren't able to, Tuesday, December 4th.
Okay. And so, you know, a lot of people showed up in the general election. It was almost 4 million Georgians. What do you think the challenge is going to be getting that many people re-engaged to come back around?
Well, I think, you know, what I'm seeing now is a tremendous amount of energy and enthusiasm and activation. And we were talking just before the show, you know, having Leader Abrams fighting a gubernatorial race that was tremendous, inspiring people. I watched her on the trail, county after county, inspiring folks to turn up, to activate their voice. She amplified voices of so many. And I think this, what we're in now in Georgia, we're on the cusp. This is a swing state for 2020. And when we think about what we have to do, this is not a revolution, this is an evolution. And when people said to me when I decided to run, like, can you really win? This guy's been here for 12 years. I said, if I don't run, I can't win. And if I don't run, the next person can't win. And this runoff that we have on December 4th is so critical for continuing to engage folks in what is not one fight, but it is the shaping of our society. So I keep saying to folks, this is building. The biggest challenge we've got is I think folks don't know there's a runoff because we don't have the governors in a runoff election. Traditionally, we see about 10 to 15% of folks showing up, which would be about 400,000 to 600,000 voters coming for the runoff based on the election results from November 6th. But we're actually anticipating that it could be a swell election again, 750,000 to 1 million voters. I think folks are ready, they're active, and they want to continue to stay engaged, particularly as we look towards 2020.
I definitely agree with you. I think that we will see a swelled election, just like they didn't think that almost 4 million people would show up November the 6th. I think December the 4th, we'll see over 1 million people show up. And because of candidates like you, that people are going to turn out but particularly because people in Georgia are really engaged in the political process. And I think that that's a great start as we continue to move forward. So let's kind of dive into some of the issues. I did prepare a few questions that I wanted to get answers for and to engage the listeners. So let's just start with the big elephant in the room. So there are 2 new nuclear reactors under construction at Plant Vogtle, and they're over budget and years behind schedule. Should the project continue moving forward? And if so, why should it continue?
Yeah, so Plant Vogtle, as you mentioned, is the expansion of a nuclear project in Waynesboro, Georgia. And what's been very interesting to me on the trail is while there are folks who care deeply about Plant Vogtle, most folks have never heard of it. The things that people care about are the things that touch their lives. And in my experience, that's been their bills. But when you start to talk about this nuclear plant, you do educate folks about what's going on. This is an outrage. So Plant Vogtle in this expansion is now one of the most expensive infrastructure projects in the history of the United States. Let's let that sink in. One of the most expensive infrastructure projects in the history of the United States. Initially approved under the chairmanship of my opponent, this project is now double the cost and years behind schedule. And guess who's paying for that? Us taxpayers, us ratepayers. So if you get a Georgia Power bill every month, you will see a line item, and that's paying for Plant Vogtle. And the problem that we've got is that the commissioners who are sitting in these seats have approved this project every single step of the way. This project has failed over and over again to meet its timelines, to be on budget, and Georgia Power still is going to make $12 billion in profits from this project. Now, the average family in Georgia has paid $100 every year for the last 6 years. That's $600. So for some of us, that may not be a lot, but the average Georgia family does not have $400 in case of an emergency. So when a commissioner makes a decision to approve a plant with no stamped timelines, that's over budget, and they continue to write a blank check to do that, I see a problem. So in terms of moving forward, I would not approve an additional dollar in cost overruns until this project is finished. I want to see it online and delivering benefit to consumers. And I don't think that ratepayers should be paying any more. We've got shareholders who can share not just in the reward, but in the risk of the project as well.
Wow. And I mean, that just educated me. I didn't know. I knew what Plant Vogtle was. I knew about the cost overruns, but I didn't realize the line item situation. I just kind of paid my bill. But wow. So if you were not to rubber stamp, more expenditures, how would that affect the bottom line of them actually completing the project?
Well, as a regulator, it's a little bit different than being a policymaker. The Public Service Commission exists to make sure that we have strong, healthy utilities and that consumers are protected. Mm-hmm. And I think that balance is out of whack. We've got the utilities doing these projects with rubber stamps without having the accountability and the voice of the consumers really expressed on the commission. So to me, Gerald, it's not, if you don't rubber stamp, then what? It's saying with a strong, independent voice to the utilities, if you want to finish the project, pay for it, deliver the results, and we'll pay for the energy. That doesn't take, I think, a lot of strength. What we do know is that my opponent gets a lot of his money, over 80% of his money, from the very entities that he is supposed to regulate. And our money comes from regular people.
Should the Georgia General Assembly amend the Georgia Nuclear Financing Act to limit or prevent Georgia Power from profiting from subsequent project delays at Plant Vogtle?
I think what we've seen is that when you have unfettered ability to charge consumers, it's not a good thing. So I'm not sure what might happen in the future, and I don't want to speculate, but I certainly think that consumers have put enough into projects like this, and the world is changing. The way we're going to get our energy is changing. So right now in Georgia, we have the third highest bills in the country. The third highest bills in the country. We've got folks in Atlanta we have the fourth highest energy burden here. People are paying more to meet their energy needs than almost anywhere else in the nation. And we have to rethink how we're investing and how we're creating energy. And I think we know that the advanced energy economy, solar and other forms of energy generation are coming at us like a train. We need to think about those new technologies and not just build dinosaurs of the past.
And that's one I wanted to follow up on. What do you think Georgia's capacity for engaging in new clean energy is, and how do we move the state towards that?
I think the capacity is tremendous. Right now, of our energy, only 1% comes from solar. 1% comes from solar. We could be doing so much more. We could be shooting for 3%, 4%, 5%. We're not talking about mass amounts. We're saying let's increase from where we are today. And companies are demanding it. We've got companies that want to relocate to Georgia and have said we want to make sure our energy comes from renewable energy, and we can't guarantee that, and we're going to miss out on the economy of the future. Stacey Abrams, when she was running for governor, had a very sophisticated advanced energy economy plan where she laid out how we could be creating tens of thousands of jobs from renewable energy. We have so much potential here, and we need to use it.
So I know the Public Service Commission is organized into zones or areas. Districts.
Yeah.
Which district are we talking about?
All right, so it's very confusing, and I think they want to make it confusing so that these seats can fly under the radar and no one notices. So the way it works is the Public Service Commission divides Georgia into 5 districts. But the only importance of a district is that the candidate has to live there. So I have to run in District 3 because I live in District 3. District 3 is DeKalb, Fulton, Clayton, and Rockdale counties, and I live in DeKalb County. So I'm running for District 3. Now it's a 6-year term, the longest term in state government. So it's a really important election because you only get a chance once every 6 years for each seat. And they rotate those seats. So this year of the 5 commissioners, 2 are up for re-election. Tricia Pridemore just got re-elected, and Chuck Eaton is the incumbent that I'm challenging. I keep saying, chuck him out, it's Miller time.
I like that, it's Miller time. It's Miller time. So what made you just want to get politically involved and run for office?
Yeah. This race is about justice. I meet women who are trying to decide, am I going to put food on the table or am I going to pay my heating bills? Am I going to turn on my AC or am I going to give my kids food? These are serious choices that people are making. And our leaders are not doing enough to make sure that those choices aren't as hard as they are today. We've got schools trying to decide, do I keep the lights on or do I train my teachers? Small business owners who are drowning in their bills. And I've gone around this state and I've listened to thousands of Georgians and their stories. This race is about justice. So you ask why. My parents immigrated here before I was born from South Africa. They were very active in the anti-apartheid movement, and they always said to my brother and I, if you see an injustice, you better raise your voice. If someone's on fire, you don't yell fire, you go and you take water and you douse them out, right?
Yes.
I saw these problems and I looked around and I thought, if not me, who? And if not now, when? And I went to meet with Stacey Abrams after the 2016 election. I sat down with her and I said, I want to serve. I see these injustices. And she said to me, you need to run for the Public Service Commission. And you know what I said to her? That is the least sexy thing anyone's ever said to me in my entire life.
Yes. Yeah.
It is there's the least accountability, there's no public voice. Most people have never heard of this seat. And of the 5 statewide elected officials, 2 women have ever been elected in the history of this state. It is the epitome of the good old boys network. And she looked at me and she said, Lindy, that's why you need to run. So now I'm running for the most important seat and I'll get it.
Wow. That is a really inspiring story. And we're going to be right back in a few minutes. But it's the holiday season, and I think of no better way than to bring in the holiday season than All I Want for Christmas with Mariah Carey. So you're listening to Justicefighter Radio with Attorney Gerald, Griggs, and Lindy Miller. In a minute, we will have candidate John Barrow. But All I Want for Christmas.